So architecture, a lot of people get it misconstrued because architects do not build buildings. We design space. That's the simplest way to put it. We design space. So the space that we're in right now had to be designed by an architect because you can't just approach any type of construction or any type of project or piece of real estate and just start throwing things up because there's a lot of coordination that goes into it. Like we're in a cigar lounge right now. You have to have all types of ventilation systems and AC and lighting and all of that. So an architect really orchestrates that entire process. We design the space and we coordinate the team in order to put a building together.
What up, though, Black Fridays family? Welcome back to another installment of the Black Fridays podcast. Today's episode is very special because we got family in the building. I want to introduce y'all to Noir Architects, Kirk Welsh. How you doing, my brother?
All good, all good. How you doing, bro?
I'm doing great, man. Good to see you.
Likewise. It's been a long time. We've been talking about this for a minute.
For sure. I'm glad we able to make this a reality. So before we get formally started, I always give my guests a chance to tell more about who they are as a person and also what they represent as far as their brand and business. So if you could give us a little bit more insight into Kirk Welsh, the person, and then also Noir Architect.
Kirk Welsh as an individual is just a person that is very, very adventurous, a person that's very, very motivated, that really, really believes in family morals and just morals as a great human being and a person in general. That's Kirk Welsh. Is a person I have a close-knitted circle. So I don't let really a lot of people into the circle at all. That's me, and I'm a family man at its core. So that's Kirk Welsh as a person.
And then tell us more about Noir Architect and how that came to be.
Yeah. So Kirk Welsh as a business or a brand or a person, it's Noir Architecture. So I recently became a licensed architect in September of last year. So that was a 13-year grind. From that, I created Noir Architecture, but that's been a legal entity since 2017 in itself. But I wasn't able to practice architecture as a profession until I got licensed. So Noir stands for Black Architecture, so Noir is French. And it's really a play on the word. I didn't want to be out there and say this is Black architecture, but have something or a brand that represents something that's classic, something that is vintage, and something that has good aesthetic taste. So I'm an architect, licensed architect in the state of Michigan, and going for reciprocity in the territory of Puerto Rico. And also I'm a real estate investor and developer.
Dope. And we're definitely going to dig more into that as we get into the interview. But I got to introduce you to my favorite part of Black Fridays, which, you're familiar with the podcast, so you should be familiar with this segment, Freestyle Fridays. And it's a random assortment of questions. They all about you, so you shouldn't get them wrong. And only got two rules. You answer honestly, and you answer every one.
Okay.
All right. So because you talked a little bit about your journey and you traveling and living different places, we both have, where is your favorite place that you say that you lived so far?
That I lived? Man, so I've lived in Europe for a minute. I've lived Puerto Rico for a number of years, Mexico. I have to say Puerto Rico. I have to say Puerto Rico, man. It would be a disservice not to say Puerto Rico. So Puerto Rico for sure.
That's your second home. So also, I need to know, me and you both cut from the same cloth. I think that's how we met each other and kept each other around all these years. And I know that you had a bunch of jobs over the years because you definitely got the hustler spirit. What's the most random job you feel like you ever had? Or the first one that come to mind?
Bro, so it was after freshman year at Michigan. I got like a sales job where I had to go door to door, but it only lasted a week. It was super random, bro. But I needed some money before I started driving a bus. So it was a sales position where we had to go door to door in these random places. We went to Paw Paw, Michigan, and bro, I knew nothing about Paw Paw. I didn't even know where it was at that time. I thought it was an imaginary place, but I had to go door to door and sell stuff to save whales or something like that. It was super random, bro. I only lasted a week. I got my check and I bounced. It was over with.
I thought you were gonna say the bus because you was a bus driver. You got your, is it a CDL or what license you need to drive?
Yeah, that ain't a random job though, you know.
You don't see too many people just driving the bus in college, but
I still have my CDL license too.
That's we might need that in the future.
For sure.
So yeah, keep that for sure.
Yeah.
I want to know, do you remember, and can you remind us of the first house you remember growing up in? Since we were talking about real estate, we're talking about architecture. Do you remember first house that you grew up in, and what was it like?
Should I name the address?
I wouldn't. I would in case somebody live there right now.
103 blank blank Myra. That's on Plymouth and Wyoming. That's my hood. That's the hood I represent. P Rock, Plymouth Road. I remember growing up in that neighborhood, and I mean it was some of everything that I experienced there. Like it was drive-bys that we experienced there.
Yeah.
I just experienced having fights outside the house or just playing basketball. Going to school in that neighborhood for a minute. Like, I just remember that house day in and day out. We had a dog named Uno. It was just, it's a real raggedy crib, but
okay.
I remember that. That's where all my childhood memories were. My mom and my auntie got into a fight with a lady outside the crib, so it's a lot of memories, definitely.
For sure. And I grew up not too far down the road, which we didn't find out until later in Schoolcraft, so literally an exit away. So, yeah, definitely resonate with that region of Detroit and that era in growing up, because, yeah, that wasn't too far-fetched in a lot of neighborhoods. And
my grandma got her Cardi snatched Plymouth and Wyoming in that neighborhood too. Yeah.
Wait, you trying to tell me grandma had the Cardis on?
Grandma Essie she had some wires and she had some prescription lenses in them.
Okay.
And she was going into the gas station and had my little cousin in her hand. And as a dude was holding the door for her, he snatched her Cardis and ran across the street. But he didn't get too far with him because they had prescription lenses in them anyway.
Got you. Okay. Yeah. Oh, man. What's the best piece of advice that you feel like you've ever received, or the first piece of advice that comes to mind?
It's a lot of great advice that, I've received over the years, and I'm sure you have received over the years that really, really sticks with you. But the thing that actually really comes to mind after you ask that question is, like, just be yourself. Mm-hmm. Just authentically be yourself, because I struggled a lot with that, especially leaving Detroit and going to Michigan. Like, it's really a pruning process on, trying to really find yourself. And I felt the best, and I feel the best right now is because I'm authentically myself. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing that has stuck with me through every endeavor, every situation, every circumstance that I endured in life, is just like, be myself. Even in Puerto Rico, like, you struggle from identity crisis, really trying to fit into another culture, but it was best when I was with myself. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Most definitely. And as far as us being city guys, West Side, Detroit, Michigan, through our high school years, college years, we made a lot of these runs. I got to know, when you pull up to the Coney Island, what are you ordering?
Oh, that's easy. Grilled chicken pita with the honey mustard, deluxe fries with the chili cheese on them for sure, and a fruit punch.
That's going to put you right to sleep.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
That's exactly what you need, too.
For sure.
So congratulations. You successfully passed Freestyle Fridays. Thank you for engaging in the randomness and the shenanigans.
That was
Thank
easy.
you and for the memories.
That was easy. Them was easy questions.
It was a layup?
Yeah, because you asked some crazy stuff.
I try to keep it clean for, the podcast and the brand, but you know how I go off camera. But as far as talking more about your journey and becoming an architect, you don't see a lot of black kids navigating towards that profession, so much so that only 2% of all licensed architects in the world or the U.S.
I think that statistic came from the U.S.,
okay.
But it's probably even less via the world.
Okay.
Know what I mean? So it's the U.S.
Okay. So in the U.S., only 2% of licensed architects are black or from that background. And I wanted to know, as far as you can remember back, when do you feel like you started to gravitate towards that particular profession? Because the high school that we went to the best high school in the city. Shout out to Cass Technical High School. And there you have the option to be able to start a career path or pick a curriculum is what they called it, and then go down that route. And they had one that was adjacent to architecture. And I want to know if it started for you there in high school, or was it even earlier than that? Like you felt like you were gravitated towards that industry.
That's a great question. That's a great question. And, you know, I've contemplated that a number of times. But to answer that question directly and then go into a little bit more detail, I believe that it started at Cass. I mean, the innate interest, of course, it started from the womb. Like, it's a God-given thing. Like, it's what I've always wanted to do in some fashion or form. So whether it been construction, architecture, real estate, something in that industry I've always wanted to do. But I believe going to Cass really, really cultivated that because, you know, when we first start there, we have to take that survey that talks about our interests, and then they place you in a program to prepare you for it. So, I mean, through that, I was placed inside of the program and was able to take a drafting class that really, really cultivated that interest and took it a step further. And then, you know, once we got to Michigan, I fell away from that, listening to other advice like, you know, architect, we don't even know what they really do. Yeah. You know, you need to be a lawyer, a doctor, an engineer, something that we all know. And I kind of fell away from that, and I took an engineering class. It was like computer programming or whatever. I sat in that class for like a week, bro, and it was over with. I looked around like, this is not where I'm supposed to be. And our boy Yohiro, he actually went straight into architecture. So I visited him one time in an architecture studio at Michigan and instantly fell in love, and then I applied for the program. So I would say that it started at Cass Tech, which I'm super, super grateful for going to that school. And I understand that a lot of us, especially in underrepresented communities, don't get an opportunity to understand what our interests are and be placed in that.
Absolutely. And I wanted to know if you could, like you said, a lot of people don't even fully understand the scope of architecture, what that entails, what type of work you all do, how does the inner workings of that profession. Could you explain to us what architecture is, what the basis of it is, and then what it means to you, Kirk, being an architect?
Yeah. So architecture, a lot of people get it misconstrued because architects do not build buildings. We design space. That's the simplest way to put it. We design space. So the space that we're in right now had to be designed by an architect because you can't just approach any type of construction or any type of project or piece of real estate and just start throwing things up because there's a lot of coordination that goes into it. Like, we're in a cigar lounge right now. You have to have all types of ventilation systems and AC and lighting and all of that. So an architect really orchestrates that entire process. We design the space and we coordinate the team in order to put a building together. So we get the drawings together and we coordinate with a mechanical engineer, an electrical engineer, plumbing engineer, structural engineer, any type of engineer that goes into a building. We coordinate that entire process. We all put the drawings together and we hand that booklet to a contractor or general contractor, and they build the building. So architecture or an architect, the first step should be the first step in building any type of structure or building, for sure. So that's where we orchestrate the entire process.
Got you. Yeah. And then for you, what does it mean to you to be an architect?
Man, it's big, especially being a part of the 2%. Like, it's such an extensive process to become a licensed architect. So I wanted to become licensed to play for ownership. So it means much more to me. Like, now I can be the master of my profession and my fate. Before then, I had to always work under someone licensed. And as you can imagine, if it's only 2% of us, you can imagine what type of culture I had to work under.
Right.
And their type of belief systems, they come from a totally different place. They believe in totally different things. So to be able to be a licensed architect myself, to be able to stamp drawings and to put a building together myself, or to help or mentor the other talent, that means a lot to me because now you can have influence on the next generation, next culture of what architects look like. So that means a lot to me. It means influence and ownership and
Yeah.
equity in any deal.
Most definitely. And because I know you're very thoughtful and meticulous as far as how you go about projects and doing work, what would you say is your process when you approach a project as an architect? Like, how do you kind of think about the landscape, how you want to set things out, and if you could kind of take us through your process with that?
Yeah, that's a great question too, because it's so person specific, that question. But I would say with anything I approach, I think about the beginning and I think about the end. What is my goal, my end result? I don't just get into anything and just like get straight into it. So I think about the goal. What is the type of experience that I want to give the user of the space? Like, who is actually going to use this space? What background do they come from? What are they interested in? What do they want to see? We're in the cigar lounge right now. If I can ask you a question, what's important for you when you step into a cigar lounge? What type of environment do you like to see?
I like to see somewhere where I'm going to have enough space and be comfortable. Definitely like to feel like it's ventilated, so a lot of smoke around, so you don't want to feel like you're in a choking. And then also something that has like a really good vibe to it, makes you feel relaxed when you come into the space.
Yep, and that's super important. So understanding like the health benefits of that, like you talked about the smoke being ventilated. That's one thing I try to approach it thinking about the health of someone, the safety, the welfare of an individual, and just really the vibe that you want to create. So I think about the end, and then I work backwards. So I think about the person and the environment.
Gotcha. And as far as Noir architecture goes, can you give us a little bit more insight as to the services that you provide, some projects that you may have worked on, or like a favorite project that kind of comes to mind so we can get more into the inner workings of the business and the brand?
Yep. So a project that I've worked on in the city that I'm pretty proud of, it is called Momento Gelato, and it's right across from the old Tiger Stadium, and it's a gelato shop. So the guy, his name is Tom Isaiah, he went over to Italy, and he learned from Italians how to make gelato. So he spent 3 to 6 months over there, right? And he came back and he had the idea of creating a gelato shop. So he was very clear with his intentions, the environment, the vibe he wanted to set up, and he was a great person to work with. So, it's a space that's up and running now. The environment, the inside is really nice. So if you were ever in the area, it's right on Michigan Ave, and I can't think of the other street, the cross street.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yep.
It's right across the street from the old Tiger Stadium. So that's a project that I worked on that I'm pretty proud of through the business. And then what was the first part of your question? I'm sorry.
What services would you say that you provide?
Yep. So it's hard to say the services that I provide without going into definition of what those services are. But we do.
If you gave us the play school version.
Yeah, all right. So we do feasibility studies. So that means, is your project actually feasible? Like, you can come and say you have all of these ideas, but is it really feasible? Are you able to put that project in a specific place? Do you have a specific place that you want to put this project? Do you have the finances in place to do that? Like, it's a lot of things that actually go into a project. So that's the first step. We do feasibility study. And then once it's feasible to do as a project, we do conceptual design. So sitting down with a client saying, what type of environment do you want to create? What is the business? Are you doing a spa? What are the colors that you want to put into the space? What is the emotion that you want to invoke? Like, what does the lighting look like? Is it a dim space? It is well lit, something like that. So conceptual design, right? And then we actually look at the space that you have. So it can be a small brick and mortar. You look at it, see the square footage, understand, like, do we need to put another floor on this thing? Can we do it in one level? Something like that, right? So that's the conceptual design. And then we go into actual design of the space, so the specifics. So what do the mechanical systems look like? What are these specific spaces and things like that? And then we go into the actual completing the drawings, which is construction development or construction documents. So that's actually putting the drawings together. And then there's a service that we provide called construction administration, which is after the contractor is starting the work, we administer the construction. So we make sure that the building is being put together according to these drawings that we put together. Because, bro, you'll be surprised. Like, contractors that say they've been working in this business for a long time, bro, they'll put toilets on the walls. If you search, like, construction catastrophe or whatever on Google, bro, you'll see some crazy stuff. So we have to go through and we make sure that the construction is actually being administered specifically to the drawings that we put together.
So normally when an architect enters a project, do they normally stop at passing off that playbook pretty much? Or like when does that process normally stop versus being involved in the construction? Like how far can it go and where does it normally stop, I should say?
Yeah, so most times it stops just giving them the packet to the playbook. Like, it's like putting together furniture at IKEA. You got somebody that actually draws up the instructions, but if the instructions trash, you don't know how to put it together. So it usually stops at handing over the instructions, right? But a lot of times, people look at the documents and they can't interpret them the way that you drafted them up. So it stops there, and then you can do the other service, which is construction administration, where you hire an architect to oversee the process. So, yeah, that's what we do. We like to oversee the process, too.
Got you.
Yeah.
So being able to have the level of involvement that you do in your projects that you that you previously worked on, that you're currently working on, how do you see yourself making impact in the community? Because I know that a lot of stuff that you do is community driven and wanting to leave the places that you came from better than you found them. So how would you say that you're able to drive impact or looking to drive impact through your work?
So I think it go way deeper than architecture in itself, like just the practice of architecture. So I also am a professor or adjunct professor at University of Detroit, Michigan, right? So being able to influence the individuals that get into the school that actually is involved in architecture and get an opportunity to practice or learn about architecture is deep. And I have a story that's important to kind of talk about. So I teach at the school, and there was a student that actually didn't get into the school, but she went through this program that we do. We do this program called Project Pipeline, and it is a program. It's like a week-long program, and it's during the summer, and is marketed towards like 11th and 12th graders. But if you're in 9th or 10th grade, we're not going to turn you away from the program. But it's to teach you about architecture. So we do that week-long program there to teach them about architecture. And there was one student that actually went through the program, and I'm not going to say who it is, obviously, but it was at University of Detroit Mercy. We were able, they're really good. I want to say that they're really good at like helping and helping us to provide a facility for mentorship and things like that. So this is not a slight against them at all. I want to make that clear. But we had the program at the University of Detroit Mercy. She did the week-long program, and then she was super interested in architecture from that program, and she applied to University of Detroit Mercy, but she didn't end up getting in because of some admissions process. It was maybe a testing score, GPA, I don't know, right? But I knew her personally, so she contacted me. She was like distraught, saying that she didn't get an opportunity or a chance to go to the university at that moment of time when she thought, because she didn't get in. And I was able to go into the office and talk directly to the dean and say, well, you need to take another look at this application right here, because this student, she's this, she's that, she's great, she's going to be great for this school and great for architecture. And she's never had an opportunity because she didn't go to Cass Tech that offered these classes, right? So he took a second look at the application and admitted her immediately. And now she's in her junior year of school right now at University of Detroit Mercy and doing great. So the impact is way deeper than the work that I actually do as far as practicing architecture. It's influencing who can actually have access to getting into a school that teaches you architecture, and she'll be licensed one day, and she'll be able to do the same for someone else. So that was super, super impactful for me. That I would say is important to answer the question.
Yeah, and that's huge. And shout out to you for being able to be an advocate for her in that regard, because I think me and you both have been a part of different programs, mentoring programs, shout out to Midnight Golf Program, where we had access to people who were able to be advocates and be there for us in our time of trying to understand, figure things out at a young age, and then just being that voice of reason and direction as well. So I think that's very important to be able to have that level of impact from that standpoint. So I think that that's definitely huge. And I also wanted to understand better as far as what you're doing, because you have entered the realm of real estate and being able to combine that with your architectural background. I want to know, what is it being able to invest in, work on real estate related projects, and then have that architectural background? Because to me, somebody who doesn't fully understand kind of that landscape, it seems unique to be able to have that level of intelligence, background, experience, and then, you know, combine that with real estate as well. So I want to know, what has that been like for you?
Man, that's a super critical question. I'm glad that we actually going in that direction, because business or just entrepreneurship is sales, and you have to sell a product or a service. And architecture is a service business. You're selling a service. And I've always known that I wasn't really interested in selling a service, because you have to do it over and over and over again. You have to convince somebody about the importance of architecture or whatever you do. You create websites. And you got to convince a person over and over again why they should go with you, right?
Every time.
And that's crazy. That's just a crazy process.
And they know why they need a website. It's clear as day, but yeah, I'm with you.
And people don't even know what architects do. So you have to educate them on what architecture is, first and foremost, why it's important for them to hire an architect, and then coach them through the actual service, the whole process. Well, what comes next? And this is expensive, and that and the other, right? So I always knew that I wanted to be in the asset business. So I wanted to use architecture as a means to have equity in real estate deals, because you hear a lot about real estate, and majority of millionaires or self-made millionaires, they have real estate or they got rich from real estate, right? So with that being said, I've always known that I want to get into real estate. And one of the individuals that you need in real estate that's going to be super important, that's a big line item, is an architect. So I thought, you know, in real estate deals, what if I can be the architect too? So I can get an architect back, and then I can get the real estate deal back, and I can have the asset, and I always get paid off of the asset. And there's a lot of tax benefits to that, and also there's a lot of upside when you start to sell the property too, once it starts to appreciate. So I've always known that I wanted to use that as equity in a deal. And things that the type of education that you get from architecture, you get a chance to understand how to communicate with contractors, relationship building, like realtors. You need to build a team when you start to get into real estate. So it's like, the time that I'm taking to become an architect, I can do a double whammy. I can start to build relationships with these people I need on the team. I can understand how to use the nomenclature and just the vocabulary of communicating with a contractor, an engineer, an architect, so on and so forth. And I can architect my own deals. So that was a no-brainer for me. Like, it just took patience and time to be able to put that together.
Yeah, and they definitely go hand in hand. Like you said, they're a part of a different side of the coin or the process as far as it goes, and literally being able to essentially pass the baton to yourself once you do the architectural part of it, and then be able to own the deal literally from beginning to end, I think is super dope. And wanted to know, as far as like, how has that been? So the conversation that we're having about architecture and real estate, obviously you're dealing with physical assets, brick and mortars. I was interested to know, as we invoke on this digital world, you have AI, you have all different types of tools out here to help us do different things. Where do you kind of see the future of real estate, architecture, that industry, that realm that you're in right now? Where do you kind of see that going? And I know you see a lot of benefits in some of those things, just kind of being able to understand where the market is going and where the market is heading, and not being afraid to try new things. So I want to know, like, what's your perspective on how that's impacting the industry now and where it's headed in the future?
Man, that's a difficult question, because first and foremost, I'm not even into like a lot of the digital stuff. I barely use social media. So I'll be the first to say that I don't understand the space at all, and that's something that I've been really, really taking time to get educated on, because now they have the Facebook world, the
Metaverse.
metaverse,
Yep.
right? And they creating like digital real estate in the metaverse, and people buying up all of these different parcels and things like that. And I just don't understand the space yet. Like, all right, we live in the physical world. We here right now. Like, what are y'all creating that I don't know? And why are people buying digital real estate, and why is that so valuable right now? So I think, the industry is moving more towards it, although I don't understand it. And it is my job to educate myself or seek knowledge on understanding that space, or you get left behind, because that's how Blockbuster got left behind, not understanding the model of Netflix. You know what I mean? So it's moving digitally. Everything else is moving digitally. So when you go into any type of brick and mortar space, let's say you go into Meyer, your checkout is digital. I went into Plum Market the other day on Woodward, and they had the hot food bar. You go get your food, and you check yourself out and sit there and eat. Everything is digital. And I'll be a fool to think that, real estate and architecture and things like that won't go digital. I actually read an article yesterday that talked about, we use a program called Revit to build models and stuff for architecture. And they're creating some type of text or speak to model type of thing where you speak and you say, create a 3-story building, and they create a 3-story building right there. I want the structure to be 20 feet away, and I want this to be the lighting. And you speak to it, and it starts to model these things up. So it's moving towards there, bro. And I think that's scary, but it's an opportunity too.
Right.
So I don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah.
But
I'm sure a lot of people in that space or in different spaces get scared because they think it's going to replace them or their job. But what a lot of people do, it's not going to replace you. The landscape is going to change on how the work is getting done. So like you said, you still have to go in with your eye, know the different nuances of how a structure should be built, what should be included, what shouldn't be, and be able to chisel that out of the stone to create that project. And the AI is not going to, or the tool is not going to be able to do that for you, but it is going to expedite some things if you take the time to learn how to use it.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem with it expediting the process, because it take a long time to actually create this stuff. So, with the Chat GPT, if you can create a business plan and real quick, or just the foundation of a business plan real quick.
Contracts.
Contracts. If you can do something similar, which it is going to happen in architecture or the process, I'm totally for that. Like, I would just adapt to the space, because I figure it would say, like, maybe it's not Newton or somebody, but they say I forget, Darwin, he say, like, the quickest to adapt will be the person that lasts the longest.
Yep.
I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
But I just adapt. Everybody should just adapt to whatever the future is like.
Yep. And I wanted to ask you, speaking of the future of this space, you talked about it a little bit more about how you've been able to be currently an advocate, but how do we make more equity in this space? We talked about at the beginning of this 2% licensed architects in the U.S. are black, only 2%, very small amount. So if it's 100 architects that's licensed, only 2 of those people are black, which is super low, very low. We definitely need more representation in that space overall. In your opinion, how can we create more equity in that space?
I mean, it starts with the education. I think everybody's educating right now. I mean, I think we're doing our job with educating on whatever space you are. So that's from a macro scale is the education piece. But I think it's really micro, the individual. Like, a lot of people want stuff doing the least amount of effort, and they want the biggest reward. So you have to look deep inside yourself as an individual and understand that things take time. Like, me becoming a part of the 2% licensed architects, that was a 13-year grind. 13 years, bro. So in order to have equity, which will streamline or put you right into wealth, you have to do your job as an individual, understanding your interest, understanding what actually really goes into that, and separating yourself. So, equity in real estate is acquiring the property, holding the property, having money to renovate the property, managing the tenants or whatever, right? That's a lot of work. So as long as you are committed to doing the work, you have the reward of the equity. You have the reward of the equity, you get the wealth, and you'll be able to pass that down to your generation. So I think it's just patience, education, and just actually putting in the time and the grit in order to see that through, bro.
Yeah.
Because it's just the beginning. I got licensed, but that's just the beginning. Like,
Right.
13 years to start.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
So in terms of your journey to, or the process that you took to where you are in your career, something that makes you unique is the fact that you started your architecture journey obviously here in the United States and going through high school and then college. But as far as starting the process of you becoming a licensed architect, you did your graduate studies in not a different country, but a different part of the country in Puerto Rico. So if you could talk about like kind of what significance that has to the work that you do now and how that kind of sets you apart from others.
Yeah, that's a great question because me being a licensed architect I don't want to downplay and say it's nothing special, but I'm going to say it's nothing special for a lack of better words. It's nothing special because, yeah, I'm a part of the 2% Black African-American licensed architects here in the United States, but that's something that others have done, you know. So I further wanted to separate myself by going to Puerto Rico and challenging myself to be under a different environment, a different culture, and open myself up to a bigger market. So not only can I practice architecture or real estate in anywhere where they speak English, but I can practice in any other place where they speak Spanish too. And I wanted to really further separate myself and really saying that I'm a Black licensed architect that speaks Spanish fluently, and I can mix and mingle with another culture and open myself up to a totally different market as far as real estate, as far as architecture, as far as equity, obtaining different assets and things like that.
And there's global projects and expansion on the horizon for the future?
Absolutely. So I wanted to plant my flagship here in Detroit because I know the market, I know the people. This is where I am. This is where family is and things like that. So what I like to do in business is start slow and then vamp it up. So start obtaining my assets here and definitely have aspirations and I have a plan to go global. I'll go into Puerto Rico and then to Mexico, and then I won't talk about the other places I go, but there's definitely global expansion in the future for sure.
Love it, love it. So for Kirk Welsh, for Noir Architecture, what do you see in your crystal ball as being next? Or what's some things that we like to put things in the universe here on Black Fridays and let it see it come back. So what do you want to put out there as far as things that you working towards, things that you want to see into fruition, some dope projects you might want to work on? What do you see in your crystal ball?
So equity and obtaining more assets, because I'm on the road to be not just a millionaire, a multimillionaire. So my future is looking like obtaining more assets and more equity in deals and more real estate. And like I said at the beginning, I didn't want to continue to provide a service. I don't want to continue to do architecture as a profession. Mm-hmm. I don't want to continue to design buildings for developers that are multimillionaires. I want to be the developer, or I'm going to be the developer that hires an architect or an architecture firm to do that. So obtaining more assets is what I see in the future, and using Noir Architecture as the entity to help me to do that, because I don't own anything personally. Kirk Welsh doesn't own anything. My business owns assets, and I reap the benefits of that, but I don't own anything personally.
And then as far as to encourage more people that look like us to get in the space, or maybe interested in the space and discouraged for whatever reason, I know, like you said earlier, a big thing for you was being able to be more of yourself. So, and knowing the type of person you are, very low key, like, you know, you're not out there and overt with your personality and who you are, but as far as being able to be more comfortable with who you are, speaking up more, and displaying what you can do, how do you have any encouraging words for people to help them kind of get out of their own way as well and not limit themselves because of what they, preconceived notions or anything like that?
I don't want to curse on your podcast, and I'm not. But just do the work.
Uh-huh.
A lot of people looking for excuses, bro. They want to do things, but they don't want to put in the work and the time. Do the work. Like, if you sit there and you just in your head constantly, you're just going to be in the same place that you are, and you're going to feel unhappy. I think the best way to get over that is to do something. Like, I don't think that you can actually get into anything without having a goal in mind. Understanding what is your North Star. My North Star is to become a multi-millionaire, but that's not really the end of my North Star. My North Star is to create generational wealth and own assets and to be able to pass things down to my children. Because my dad, he was an immigrant from Jamaica that moved here when he was 15, and I learned that he couldn't read or write. He was illiterate. And when he passed, he didn't have anything to leave to me. I had to fly down to Jamaica and contribute to his funeral and things like that. So understanding what your North Star is, from that situation, I understood that I wanted to create generational wealth and to change the dynamics of my family. So once you have that North Star in place, that should always be your driving force to help you to do things. You have to create your North Star, have some goals in mind, have some action plans, and you hold yourself accountable.
Yeah.
If you don't do the work, you can't be mad at nobody else because we can all have excuses. And I did you read Rick Ross's book? I had mentioned it to you one time.
Not yet, nope.
Yeah. But he has a quote in there. He said, excuses are dangerous because they all make sense. Everybody's excuse makes sense to you and everybody else, but it's still not going to get you nowhere. So do the work. That's what I would say. Like, seek the guidance and the education. It's YouTube out here. It's Black Friday podcast. It's a lot of things. We have access to a lot of information. But at the end of the day, bro, you got to do the work. Ain't nobody going to do it for you.
Yeah. You got to jump out the window and you got to try something at the end of the day. So I definitely agree with that. I told you before as we were setting this up that the podcast to me was an opportunity to prove some things to myself that I felt like I could always do, but I wasn't exactly sure that I could, and then hold myself accountable through it, and being able to continue it and have these lovely conversations with people like yourself and other people who are out there trying to make impact through the work that they do and the legacy that they're trying to leave. So I definitely wholeheartedly agree with that. Yeah. And as we wrap up, can you tell the people where they can get in touch with you if they want to be able to, pick your brain? And I'm sure that come with a fee nowadays, but if they want to pick your brain, buy you a cup of coffee, or really just kind of follow your journey, where can they reach you at? Where can they find you?
Yeah, I actually just want to go back and make a comment to what you said and then go there. Yeah, you and I have been talking about this podcast for a long time. And you had the ideas and you talked about the inception of it and things like that. But you didn't have everything figured out at the beginning. And you just jumped out there, you started your podcast, and you started to meet dope individuals during the process, and you figuring it out along the way. So I want to commend you, bro.
Thank you.
For actually stepping out there and being an example of what people need to do. Just do something. Just do something. So, all right, so individuals can find me on Instagram at Kirk_the.architect. You can reach out to me there. Pick my brain, ask me any questions via DM. I'm always open to that. You can find me on LinkedIn as well at Kirk Welsh, which is my name. And then you can also find me on Facebook. But it's best to reach out to me on LinkedIn or reach out to me via DMs on Instagram.
Dope. And we talk like this all the time, so this ain't nothing new for us. But, of course, thank you for your time. Thank you for pulling up to the podcast and sharing your experience. I think that is very impactful and powerful story for people to learn more about the journey that you took and the importance of embracing the journey and the grind, because it definitely can pay off, and it's paying off for you now, and I know that it will much more in the future. And the things that you set out to accomplish, they're definitely going to happen and then some. So thank you once again for pulling up. And everybody that's watching, I'll tap in with y'all next time. Appreciate y'all joining the podcast.
Thank you, my brother.